Imagine waking up one morning, grabbing your phone, and seeing nothing. No signal. The GPS in your car? Dead. You step outside, and the sky is filled with shimmering, dancing lights, far more intense than any aurora you've ever seen. This isn't a dream. This is the day Earth lost its magnetic shield. What exactly is this invisible force field? And why is it so crucial for life as we know it? Earth's magnetic field is generated deep within our planet's core, where molten iron churns and flows, creating a massive dynamo. This field extends thousands of kilometers into space, forming a protective bubble called the magnetosphere. Think of it as Earth's personal bodyguard, constantly deflecting a relentless barrage of charged particles streaming from the sun, known as the solar wind. Without it, we'd be completely exposed. So, what would happen if it suddenly vanished? The first thing we'd notice would be a technological apocalypse. Our entire satellite network would be fried. GPS, weather forecasting, global communications, and even international banking systems would grind to a halt. The world would be plunged into a digital dark age almost instantly. Power grids on the ground would be next. Massive solar flares, which are normally deflected, would induce powerful electrical currents in our power lines, causing widespread blackouts that could last for months or even years. Our modern civilization, built on a foundation of electricity and data, would crumble. But the technological chaos is just the beginning. The real existential threat comes from the radiation. The magnetic shield protects us from deadly cosmic rays and intense solar radiation. Without it, these high-energy particles would bombard our planet's surface. For us humans, this would mean a catastrophic increase in cancer rates and genetic mutations. Life on the surface would become incredibly dangerous. We'd have to live underground or in heavily shielded habitats just to survive. And what about the beautiful auroras I mentioned? They would be a constant global phenomenon. While stunningly beautiful, they would be a terrifying reminder of our vulnerability. The intense radiation hitting the upper atmosphere would also start stripping away our air and water. Particles from the solar wind would literally knock molecules of oxygen, nitrogen, and water vapor out into space. Over millions of years, this process known as atmospheric stripping could turn Earth into a barren, lifeless rock, much like Mars. Mars once had a thick atmosphere and liquid water, but after its magnetic field died, the solar wind stripped it all away. Now, before you start building a doomsday bunker, let's be clear. A complete and sudden shutdown of Earth's magnetic field is extremely unlikely. The geological processes that drive it have been stable for billions of years. However, the magnetic field isn't static. It fluctuates, it wanders, and it even flips. We know from geological records that the magnetic north and south poles have swapped places hundreds of times throughout Earth's history in a process called a geomagnetic reversal. During these reversals, which can take thousands of years to complete, the magnetic field doesn't disappear entirely, but it weakens significantly, perhaps to as little as 10% of its current strength. It also becomes much more complex, with multiple magnetic poles popping up all over the globe. We are actually overdue for a reversal, and scientists have observed that the field has been weakening over the past couple of centuries. The South Atlantic anomaly, a large area of weakened magnetic field over South America and the southern Atlantic Ocean, is a clear sign that something is brewing deep within the Earth. So, a weakened field during a reversal would still pose serious risks. Radiation levels would increase, and our technology would be far more vulnerable to solar storms. But it wouldn't be the instantaneous catastrophe of a complete shutdown. It would be a slow-motion challenge that humanity would have to adapt to over generations. We would need to develop more robust satellites, reinforce our power grids, and perhaps design better radiation shielding for air travel and life in certain parts of the world. The story of Earth's magnetic shield is a powerful reminder of the delicate and often invisible systems that make our planet a haven for life. It's a silent guardian, a cosmic shield that has protected us for eons. While the thought of losing it is terrifying, studying it helps us understand our planet's past and prepare for its future. It pushes us to innovate and to appreciate the unique cosmic lottery we've won. Our planet is a dynamic, ever-changing world, and understanding its grand planetary scale processes is key to our long-term survival. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey to the heart of our planet and the edge of space. Ever wondered what would happen if all our technology just stopped? No phones, no internet, no electricity. It sounds like the plot of a disaster movie, but this scenario, often linked to a massive solar storm, isn't just science fiction. It's a real, albeit remote, possibility known as a Carrington-level event. So let us unplug from our digital world for a moment and explore what life might look like in a silent solar era. Picture this. One moment you're scrolling through your feed, and the next, your screen goes black. You try to turn it back on, but nothing happens. You glance outside, and the streetlights are off. The hum of the city has vanished, replaced by a strange, unsettling silence. This isn't just a local power outage. This is global. A colossal burst of energy from the sun, a coronal mass ejection, has just slammed into Earth's magnetic field, frying electronics and power grids worldwide. The first 24 hours would be a whirlwind of confusion. People would step out of their homes, looking for answers, but find none. Cars with modern electronic ignitions wouldn't start. Communication would be back to basics, face-to-face, or maybe shouting across the street. Without electricity, water pumps would fail, meaning no running water for most cities. The conveniences we take for granted, a hot shower, a fresh cup of coffee, a flushing toilet, would disappear in an instant. The world we know would grind to a halt. As days turn into weeks, the initial shock would give way to the harsh reality of survival. Supermarket shelves would be stripped bare within days. With no refrigeration, fresh food would spoil. People would need to find new sources of food, and more importantly, clean water. Communities might start forming, pooling resources and skills. Those with knowledge of farming, mechanics, or basic first aid would suddenly become the most valuable members of society. We'd see a return to old world skills, gardening, preserving food, and repairing things by hand. The digital age would feel like a distant dream. Hospitals would face an unimaginable crisis. Life support machines, diagnostic equipment, and surgical tools would all be useless. Doctors and nurses would have to rely on medical knowledge from a century ago. Without modern medicine and sanitation, diseases we thought were conquered could make a terrifying comeback. The lack of communication would also mean that coordinating emergency response or distributing aid would be nearly impossible. Each town, each neighborhood would essentially be on its own. What about our global economy? It would simply cease to exist. Stock markets, digital currency, bank records, all stored on electronic systems, would be wiped out. The concept of wealth would be redefined. A gold bar might be worthless if you can't trade it for a bag of potatoes or a bottle of clean water. Trade would become local and based on barter. Your ability to produce something tangible, whether it's food, clothing, or a well-made tool, would be your new currency. Months would stretch into years. A new generation would be born into this silent world, a world without screens or satellites. They would learn to read by candlelight, listen to stories told around a campfire instead of watching TV, and learn the rhythms of nature instead of the notifications of an app. A night sky free from light pollution would be ablaze with stars, a sight most of us had never truly seen. Humanity would be forced to reconnect with the physical world, and with each other in a way we haven't for centuries. But it wouldn't be a complete reset to the Stone Age. We'd still have the accumulated knowledge of humanity stored in books. Libraries would become sacred places, vaults of information holding the keys to rebuilding. People would rediscover how to generate power on a small scale, perhaps through steam or water wheels. Old-school engineering and mechanical ingenuity would flourish. The silence would be broken not by the hum of electronics, but by the sounds of hammers, saws, and human voices working together. It's a daunting thought, isn't it? But it's also a powerful reminder of how fragile our modern civilization is. Our entire way of life is built on a complex technological infrastructure that we often take for granted. A massive solar storm is a low-probability, high-impact event. Scientists at NASA and other space agencies are constantly monitoring the sun, working on better ways to predict these solar outbursts and protect our infrastructure. They're developing more resilient power grids and shielding for our essential electronics. So, while we don't need to start building a bunker just yet, it's a fascinating thought experiment. It forces us to ask important questions. What skills do we have beyond our digital lives? How resilient are our communities? Could we adapt and rebuild? The story of a silent solar era isn't just about loss. It's also about human resilience, ingenuity, and our ability to connect and cooperate when it matters most. It reminds us that our greatest strength isn't in the technology we create, but in the human spirit itself. Imagine waking up one day and everything you've ever known is gone. The sky, once a familiar blue canvas, is now a chaotic swirl of dust and debris. The power grid has failed, the internet is a memory, and the complex web of global trade that brought food to your table has vanished. This isn't just a disaster. It's the end of the world as we know it. But is it the end of humanity? Or is it the beginning of something new? Today, we re-diving deep into a fascinating and terrifying thought experiment. How would civilization reorganize after the sky collapses? Let's forget about zombies and alien invasions for a moment. We're talking about a realistic, large-scale cataclysm. A supervolcano eruption, a major asteroid impact, or a global war that shatters our infrastructure. What happens next? In the immediate aftermath, chaos reigns. The first 72 hours are a frantic scramble for survival. The primary needs are simple and brutal: clean water, safe shelter, and food. People would likely raid abandoned grocery stores and warehouses, but these resources would disappear shockingly fast. Without law enforcement, the rule would be survival of the fittest. Small, trusting groups would form families, close neighbors, maybe coworkers who happen to be together. These initial bonds, forged in fear and necessity, would be the first seeds of a new society. But these small groups can't last long on their own. The real test comes in the weeks and months that follow. The lone wolf trope sounds cool in movies, but in reality, humanity's greatest strength has always been cooperation. As the initial shock wears off, these small survival pods would start to seek each other out. Why? Because specialization is key. One person might be a former nurse with invaluable medical knowledge. Another might be a carpenter who can build sturdy shelters. Someone else might be a farmer who knows how to coax life from the soil. This is where the first real communities would begin to form. Think of them as modern-day tribes. They would likely cluster around critical resources: a clean river, a patch of fertile land, or a defensible location like a walled compound or a remote valley. Leadership would emerge naturally. It wouldn't be about who was richest or most popular in the old world. It would be about who is most capable in the new one. The person who can organize a defense, ration food effectively, or mediate disputes would become the de facto leader. This is meritocracy in its purest form. What would daily life look like in these new settlements? Hard, incredibly hard. The 9-to-5 workday would be replaced by a sun-up-to-sundown struggle. Farming would be the backbone of society. Without modern machinery and fertilizers, agriculture would revert to manual labor, similar to what our ancestors did for centuries. Everyone who is able would have a role. Some would tend the crops, others would hunt or forage, some would stand guard, and others would care for the children and the sick. Education would become practical. Kids would learn how to identify edible plants, purify water, and defend themselves long before they learned about history or algebra. But humans don't just survive. We create. Even in the harshest conditions, the need for culture, for stories, for art, would remain. Around the nightly fire, elders would pass down knowledge, not just survival skills, but stories of the before times. These tales would serve as both a warning and a source of hope. They'd remember the marvels of the old world, the internet, airplanes, medicine, but also its follies, the very things that may have led to the collapse. Music would be made with handmade instruments. Art would be carved into wood or painted on walls with charcoal. These cultural expressions would be vital for maintaining morale and a sense of shared identity. As these communities grow and stabilize, trade would inevitably re-emerge. But forget about stocks and credit cards. We're talking about a barter economy. A settlement with a surplus of grain might trade with a community that has access to salt, a critical preservative. A skilled blacksmith could trade tools and weapons for food and textiles. Roads, or at least well-trodden paths, would connect these burgeoning towns, patrolled by traders and guards. This new network wouldn't be global, but regional. Your world would shrink to the distance you could travel and return from safely. This brings us to the question of governance and law. Initially, rules would be simple and enforced by the community leader or a council of elders. Don't steal. Contribute your share. Defend the community. Justice would be swift and direct. But as societies become more complex, the need for more formal systems would arise. Perhaps they would rediscover old principles of democracy, with town hall meetings where every voice is heard. Or maybe a more feudal system would emerge, with a powerful warlord offering protection in exchange for loyalty and resources. The path society takes would depend heavily on the culture and values of its founders. What about technology? We wouldn't be thrown back to the Stone Age entirely. The world would be littered with the remnants of our civilization. People who know how to scavenge and repurpose old tech would be incredibly valuable. A working generator, powered by biofuel, could light up a whole settlement. A tinkerer might get an old shortwave radio working, allowing communication between distant towns for the first time in years. This wouldn't be about inventing new things, but about rediscovering and adapting the old. It would be a scavenger renaissance. Knowledge from salvaged books, especially encyclopedias, medical textbooks, and engineering manuals, would be worth more than gold. The new librarians would be the guardians of humanity's accumulated wisdom. Over generations, this patchwork of settlements, city-states, and tribal lands would evolve. Some might flourish into stable, prosperous republics. Others might descend into brutal dictatorships or collapse back into chaos. New languages and dialects could emerge, and the history of the before times might become myth and legend, a story of gods who lived in shining towers and flew through the sky. Humanity would have reorganized, but it would be a fractured, diverse, and fundamentally different world from the one we know. It would be a world built on resilience, community, and the enduring human spirit to not just survive, but to build, to dream, and to start again, even after the sky itself has fallen. The story of rebuilding civilization isn't just a tale of hardship. It's a testament to our adaptability. It reminds us that the structures we rely on are more fragile than we think, but the human capacity for cooperation and innovation is our ultimate survival tool. What do you think would be the most important skill to have in a post-collapse world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy exploring these big questions, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll see you in the next one.